everyone, my name is Hayley Oliver, and this is my research presentation for Theater History 2. I decided to do my research on the relationship between theater and government. I found that in the Brockett textbook alone, there are no fewer than 32 references to the phrase government regulation of theater in the index. I've decided to divide my results into 3 parts. These parts are 1. Direct government interference in theater, 2. The effects and implications of government funding of the theater, and 3. The use of theater to attempt to alter a given political climate. When considering the impact of government on theater, I first looked at instances of direct legal interference, which are plentiful in our textbook, The History of the Theater by Brockett and Hayley. For example, in Chapter 12, the textbook paints a clear picture of theater in 17th century Germany, where theater artists were not just overseen by their government, but employed by it. Theaters were built and maintained by the government, and actors were employees of the state. Of course, this system seems incredibly backwards to us now, but it cannot be denied that German theater grew exponentially under government control. Theater is a time-consuming and expensive pursuit, so the cushion provided by assured financial support allowed for a creative boom. According to the textbook, by 1842, the German states had 65 permanent theaters employing about 5,000 actors, singers, and musicians. Theater grew in popularity, and the number of acting companies soared. But this method is by no means perfect, and modern artists who have the privilege of operating freely would likely recoil at the thought of being employed by their own government. This method keeps a tight rein on subject matter and essentially reduces theaters to the same level as other public services such as parks and libraries. There's no room for artists to take risks regarding subject matter or style because they all have a very strict and powerful employer to answer to. As the textbook explains, in many states censorship became quite severe. Government officials, many with no theatrical experience, were appointed as superintendents of state theaters and too often favored routine efficiency over artistic excellence. Despite the allure of earning a secure salary in your craft, a government-operated theater is less of an artistic endeavor and more of an assembly line. I still believe, however, that this time was an important step forward in the history of theater, as it did allow the number of theater buildings, professionals, and attendees to rise. An imperfect contribution is a contribution nonetheless. The idea of direct government involvement in theater may seem old-fashioned, but it's certainly not obsolete. An article titled "The Phantom of Modern Opera: How Economics and Politics Affect the Programming Strategies of Opera Houses" was published in the International Journal of Arts Management just last year. The authors describe the difficulties associated with performing classic operas in modern opera houses. According to the authors, the classics, which have experienced a fall from grace with a majority of modern audiences, now represent a significant financial risk. Quote, "Opera houses are generally tax-exempt, government-funded organizations with a social obligation to base their programs not only on their audience's tastes, i.e. the box office, but also on what experts regard as necessary for cultivating future generations of opera-goers and for development of the field of opera itself." They go on to say, by determining the amount of public funding that will be available to performing arts organizations and the criteria for the allocation of such resources, national and local politicians have a profound influence on the decisions of performing arts organizations. While this is certainly a far cry from the 100% government-run theater system of 17th century Germany, it's important to note that government can still play a significant role in how theaters operate. While theater artists in the modern U.S. have a vastly different experience than their 17th century counterparts, the role of government in American theater today is important nonetheless and shouldn't be overlooked. The main influence of government on modern American theater lies in its financial support of the arts, and perhaps the most well-known government support for the arts in the U.S. comes from the National Endowment for the Arts, or the NEA. On the NEA's website, arts.gov, I found a 33-page document created in 2012 explaining the origin and nature of the NEA, the funding it provides, and the part I found most intriguing, the selection process for NEA funding. According to the document, NEA grants are awarded based on a peer review system in which a specialized committee reviews applications for grants. The description of these panels, in my opinion, is decidedly vague. Panels are comprised of a diverse group of arts experts and other individuals, including at least one layperson with broad knowledge of the areas under review. There's no explanation of how these people are chosen or what exactly they do, but theoretically it is a great way to balance out the panel. However, we have no way of knowing how these panels actually operate. The most important thing I gleaned from my research on the NEA is that government influence on the arts is not limited to censorship and legal control alone. While a complex system of grants may be more subtle, it certainly holds plenty of influence. An artworks grant, for example, means anywhere from $10,000 to $100,000 in funding for whomever is chosen by a government-elected panel. I'm not implying that the NEA is evil or that their grant decisions are overtly corrupt, but it is definitely likely that political agendas enter into decision-making. We are incredibly blessed to have the creative freedoms that we do. We cannot ignore the power of those who hold the strings on the national purse. Government influence on the arts not only affects theater at the professional level, but at the educational level as well. On February 14th of this year, the Education Journal issued a report titled "Government Pledges Support for the Arts." This report discussed an announcement made by Nick Gibb, schools minister in the UK, at the Music and Drama Education Exhibition about the art programs at state schools in Great Britain. The program content has been expanded so that, according to the report, all pupils will now have the entitlement to experience live theater. The report explains that this expansion was offered as a response to criticism of the EBAC system of requirements for students in the UK. While Gibb maintains that the EBAC allows plenty of space for the arts and education, a survey of instructors overwhelmingly showed that the EBAC's demands on students in core subjects leaves little room for the arts. Assuming that the study is accurate and these accusations are true, this could mean less involvement in the arts for UK students during their time in the school system, which could translate to fewer adults going into artistic fields. By far my favorite part of my research was reading about instances in which theater artists seek to affect their political climate with their work. Many of these instances came from an article called "The Democratization Process and the Nigerian Theater Artiste," published in an online journal, Studies of Tribes and Tribals, in 2010. This article shines a spotlight on Nigerian playwrights and performers who are willing to go above and beyond to push Nigerian government toward democracy with their art. One example is the opera Strike and Hunger, which dared to portray labor conditions in Nigeria in a negative light. This infraction earned the playwright a $125 fine and got the opera banned in 1946. A more severe case occurred in the career of Wole Soyinka. Soyinka challenged Nigeria's political structure through works such as Kongai's Harvest and A Dance of the Forest, and was forced to flee the country in 1995 to avoid imprisonment. Despite the efforts of these and many other Nigerian playwrights, however, the authors note that the push toward democracy has made virtually no progress during the time span discussed. As the authors put it, the Nigerian theater artiste has therefore been concerned with the evolution of a better society in all its ramifications. However, this concern has not had any substantial impact on the political system. The article goes on to argue that this lack of change means that Nigerian theater artists' contributions are insufficient, but their work has influenced countless audience members, and their courage is an inspiration to us all. Putting together this research has been an eye-opening experience, and I hope you've enjoyed watching as much as I've enjoyed making it. Thank you. Bye.